The whole town told her to run while she still could, and now she finally understands why. The poor single mom, desperate for warmth and safety in the dead of an Alaskan winter, packed up her 3 young children and moved into the only thing she had left in this world, a forgotten cabin she inherited from a man she never knew. She hoped it would be a quiet place to rebuild their lives. But on their very first night, strange lights flickered beyond the tree line. The kind of lights her late relative once wrote about in his final unfinished journal. The locals whispered that the cabin should have stayed abandoned, that some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. Then came the footprints in the snow, the missing pages from the old journals, and the night her oldest child spotted a shadow moving through the fog, watching their every step. When they finally followed the last clue Samuel left behind, they uncovered something hidden beneath the ice, a secret powerful enough to shake the entire town, rewrite decades of silence, and change their lives forever. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. Snow pressed against the narrow apartment windows like a white, unrelenting tide, the wind carving long, icy breaths through every crack in the aging building. Emily Carter sat on the edge of the thin mattress she shared with her youngest, feeling the cold seep through the threadbare fabric of her jeans, as if the winter itself wanted to take root in her bones. She was 28, but looked older in the dim light, her face pale from exhaustion, her brown hair tied in a loose, uneven knot that she hadn't had time to fix in days, her dark eyes carrying the soft, bruised shadows of too many sleepless nights. Life had carved quiet channels of worry across her features, but beneath them sat a resilience she held together for the sake of her children, even when it felt like her spirit was being peeled away piece by fragile piece. Emily had been a grocery cashier before the store cut hours, and now she pieced together whatever temporary work she could find: cleaning, stocking, shoveling snow outside restaurants for tips. She was kind by nature, with a softness that made her smile gentle and her voice patient, but hardship had forced her into a sharp-edged practicality. She didn't complain, didn't blame, didn't ask for favors. She simply kept moving like a small fire, refusing to go out in the wind. The apartment itself smelled faintly of mildew, and the baseboard heater had given up again some time before dawn. It was a wonder the place was still considered habitable, but Anchorage winters didn't allow much room for dignity when survival was on the line. On the far side of the room, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, blowing warm air onto his fingers and pretending he didn't mind the cold. At 10 years old, he was tall for his age, with sandy blonde hair that stuck out unevenly because Emily cut it herself with dull scissors. His face, angular around the jaw like his father's, held a seriousness far too old for his age. He was protective, quiet, observant, always watching the door as if ready to defend his family from whatever might come. Beside him, Grace, 7, wrapped herself tighter in the fleece blanket printed with faded cartoon bears. She was small, with thin arms and a round face dotted with freckles. Her red hair falling in soft waves she constantly tried to tuck behind her ears. Grace was gentle and dreamy, a girl who whispered stories to herself at night and drew pictures on scraps of cardboard. Her sensitivity was a tender thing, easily bruised but deeply loving. And then there was Eli, only 4 years old, still curled against Emily's side, with his tiny hand gripping the hem of her sweater. He had dark curls and large hazel eyes that looked far too trusting for the world he'd been brought into. Eli liked to laugh big, bright laughs, but winter had stolen most of those lately. This morning, he simply blinked awake and rested his head on Emily's lap, shivering small tremors that broke her heart. Emily rubbed his back, her hand trembling with cold and fear she barely contained. The landlord had raised the rent again. Her last paycheck had barely covered food, and the heater, the only thing keeping them from freezing through the night, had died its final death with a hiss and a burnt smell that still lingered. She swallowed hard, pushing down the rising panic. "Mom," Noah said quietly, pulling his thin sweater closer around himself. Are we gonna be okay today? His voice was steady, but Emily heard the tremble beneath it. He was trying to be brave. He was trying to be a little man in a world that demanded too much from boys who should still be children. Emily brushed a hand over his cheek, wishing warmth could be willed into existence. "We'll get through today," she said with a small smile. "One day at a time." It was the best promise she could give. Outside, a plow rumbled down the street, spraying snow against the windows in a glittering arc. Anchorage in winter was breathtaking, mountains rising like silent giants, the sky streaked with pale gold light. But beauty didn't soften hunger or cold. Emily stood pulling her coat from the hook by the door. It was an old navy parka from a thrift store. The zipper crooked the lining thin. When she slipped it on, she felt every missing layer, like a reminder of how much she had failed to provide. She was tightening the scarf around her neck when her phone vibrated a number she didn't recognize. For a moment, she considered ignoring it. Unknown numbers usually meant overdue notices or temp agencies offering shifts she couldn't take. But something nudged her, an instinct she had learned never to disregard. She answered. "Hello." A woman's voice came through, warm but official. "May I speak with Emily Carter?" Emily's chest tightened. Speaking. "Ms. Carter, this is Linda Harper from the Whitaker and Low Law Office in downtown Anchorage. I've been trying to reach you." Emily's brow furrowed. She knew no lawyers. She could barely afford groceries, let alone legal anything. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number." "I don't believe so." There was a pause, gentle but deliberate. "I'm calling about Mr. Samuel Whitaker." The name meant nothing. Emily searched her memory, but found only blankness. "I'm sorry, I don't know him." "He knew you." The quiet certainty in the woman's voice made Emily still. "Mr. Whitaker passed away earlier this winter. In his will, you were listed as his sole beneficiary." Emily's breath caught. What beneficiary?" the woman repeated. "He left you property." Property. The word didn't fit in her world. It didn't belong anywhere near her life of rationed meals and broken heaters. She almost hung up, almost told the woman she didn't have time for jokes or cruel mistakes. But the woman continued, gently sensing Emily's disbelief. "If you are able, Ms. Carter, we need you to come to the office. The estate is small but significant, and legally it is yours." Eli tugged her sleeve, looking up with wide, cold, reddened eyes. His lips trembled. Noah had stopped moving entirely, his expression sharpening with curiosity. Grace tilted her head, sensing something unusual. Emily swallowed. Where is this property?" "Near Seward," Linda said. "A cabin on the edge of Kenai Fjord's forest. It's old, but intact." A cabin. Heat. Walls. Somewhere her children could sleep without curling around each other like kittens trying to survive the night. Emily felt the room tilt beneath her feet. "Why would he leave it to me?" she whispered. "According to his files, he believed you were family." Emily's heart clenched. She didn't know the man, had never heard his name, but the idea that anyone had thought of her felt almost unbearable, as if the universe had paused and handed her a small, trembling lifeline. "Can you come in today?" Linda asked. Emily looked at her children, three small faces filled with hope they didn't know how to express. "Yes," she said quietly. "We'll come." When the call ended, she stood still in the cold, listening to her breath catch in the quiet apartment. Noah stepped closer. "Mom." "What was that?" Emily let out a soft, shaky laugh. "I think she said that something in our life just changed." But deep inside, beneath the hope, a thread of unease formed, because nothing in her life had ever arrived without a cost. And she had a feeling this sudden inheritance, this mysterious cabin in the woods, would be no different. The sky over downtown Anchorage was a dull gray sheet, the kind that seemed to press down on the city until every streetlight looked tired and every sidewalk felt burdened under the weight of winter. The cold was sharper here than in the little apartment, metallic biting, as if it wanted to remind Emily Carter that stepping outside meant choosing to endure. She held Eli's hand tightly, the small boy wrapped in a puffy coat 2 sizes too big, his curls peeking from under a knitted hat that had lost its stretch long ago. Noah walked beside her, alert and cautious, scanning the icy sidewalks the way a child who'd grown up too fast learned to do. Grace lingered just behind, humming softly into her scarf, creating a tiny fog with every breath as she traced shapes in the air with her mittened fingers. Emily kept them close as they approached the brick building where the law office sat wedged between a bakery and a shuttered travel agency. Her heart thudded in uneven beats, each step carrying a fragile mix of fear and hope. She tried to steady her breath, but the idea of a stranger leaving her anything felt surreal, impossible even. The name Samuel Whitaker meant nothing to her, yet here she was dragging her children into the unknown because desperation didn't care about logic. It cared about survival. When she pushed open the glass door, warm air hit her stale, dust-scented warmth that felt heavier than comforting. The office lobby was small, lit by yellow bulbs that flickered occasionally. A reception desk stood at the far end, and behind it sat a man Emily didn't recognize. He wasn't the woman from the call. He was tall, with broad shoulders under a charcoal sweater, and his black hair was neatly trimmed. His jaw was square and roughened with dark stubble, the kind of rugged look that suggested he'd been too busy or too tired to shave that morning. His hazel eyes, sharp and observant, flicked from Emily to the children before he offered a polite, steady nod. "You must be Miss Carter," he said, his voice deep but warm, carrying the hint of someone who'd learned to speak gently out of habit rather than weakness. "Linda is finishing up a meeting, but she asked me to greet you." There was something reserved in his posture. He stood straight, arms loosely crossed, as though guarding an invisible line between professionalism and kindness. Emily could tell instantly he wasn't merely a receptionist. He looked like someone who'd known harder years himself. "I'm Mark Jensen," he added. "I handle probate logistics. Please come in. You can wait in the conference room." Emily gave a small nod and ushered the children forward. As they walked, she noticed the slight stiffness in Mark's movements, the kind of stiffness that hinted at old injuries, perhaps from military service or years of physical labor. There was a quiet heaviness to him, but not unkind. He opened a glass door for them. The conference room was simple, a long wooden table, a bowl of hard candies, and framed photographs of Alaskan landscapes lining the walls, glaciers, pine forests, stormy coastlines. Emily felt her chest tighten. One of the photos showed a fog-covered ridge near Seward. She didn't know the place well, but the image stirred something she couldn't name. The children clambered onto chairs. Noah sat upright, eyes sharp with curiosity. Grace swung her legs, gently humming under her breath as if trying to keep the silence from growing too thick. Eli pressed close to Emily, his small fingers curling into her coat as if afraid she might disappear. Emily stroked his back to reassure him, though her own stomach knotted with unease. Minutes passed before the door opened again. A woman stepped inside, a woman Emily recognized instantly from the phone call. Linda Harper had a presence that felt both brisk and welcoming. She was in her early 50s with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a neat bun, soft blue eyes framed by light wrinkles that seemed to carry both compassion and exhaustion. Her build was tall and willowy, her posture confident in a way that spoke of decades handling complicated cases. She wore a gray blazer over a navy blouse, the kind of outfit that balanced firmness and empathy. "Miss Carter," Linda said, reaching out a hand. Her voice was warm, but carried the steady calm of someone who dealt regularly with grief, confusion, and surprise. "I'm so glad you came." Emily shook her hand, her fingers cold against Linda's steady grip. "This is all a bit overwhelming," Emily admitted. Linda nodded. "That's completely understandable. Please sit. There's a lot to go over." She took the seat across from them and opened a thin folder stamped with the red seal of the Alaska court system. The sight of it made Emily's pulse quicken. Legal matters always felt like sharp objects, dangerous, expensive, and ready to cut people like her without hesitation. Linda noticed the tension in Emily's shoulders and softened her tone. I know this is unexpected, but I want to assure you we are here to help you understand everything clearly. Samuel was a very meticulous man. Emily frowned slightly. I wish I could say I knew him. Linda hesitated, fingers brushing the edge of the folder. He believed he knew you, and based on the documents he left behind, he cared enough to ensure you were protected. She slid a paper forward, a copy of the will. Emily stared at her name, written in dark ink. Her full name. Her birth date. I don't understand, she whispered. Why me? Linda folded her hands gently. Samuel Whitaker was a photographer. He lived, quietly traveled widely, and spent the last 20 years in a cabin near Seward. According to his personal notes, he had a connection to your mother, though the nature of it wasn't fully documented. But you were the only person he listed. Emily's mind buzzed. Her mother had never spoken of anyone named Samuel. If there were secrets, they had been buried long before she was old enough to understand them. What exactly did he leave? She asked. Linda turned a page. A cabin, approximately 20 acres of forested land, assorted personal possessions. And she paused carefully, as if choosing her words. Some concerns. Emily's stomach dropped. Concerns. The cabin hasn't been occupied in years. Seward winters can be harsh, and there's been talk among locals that strange things happened near Samuel's property. Sightings. Noises. Flickering lights in the trees. Nothing officially documented, but enough for the sheriff's office to make notes. Grace's humming stopped. Noah leaned forward with interest, the seriousness in his face deepening. Eli clung tighter to Emily's arm. Is it safe? Emily asked, voice unsteady. Structurally, yes, Linda said. It's old, but intact. But I do want to be honest, isolated places can attract rumors. Whether they're true or not is another matter. Mark, who had remained by the door, added quietly, people in small towns like Seward sometimes build legends around anything unusual. Doesn't mean there's anything harmful out there. His tone was steady but protective, and Emily sensed he spoke from personal experience. Linda continued. There is also this. She pulled out a weathered envelope. Samuel left a personal letter for you. He asked that it be given only when you accepted the inheritance. Emily stared at the envelope, her breath catching in her throat. The paper was yellowed edges softened from years spent in a drawer. Her name was written in a rough, uneven script someone not accustomed to writing. Her hands shook as she reached for it. For a moment she couldn't bring herself to open it. You don't have to read it now, Linda assured her. Emily nodded and tucked it into her coat pocket. She didn't trust her emotions yet, not here, not with strangers. What happens next? She asked. Linda's expression softened. You sign a few documents and the property becomes yours officially. You can go whenever you're ready. Emily looked at her children, 3 small faces filled with questions, hope, fear, and something she hadn't seen in a long time possibility. She took a breath that trembled but didn't break. We'll go, she said. Mark straightened subtly at her words as though surprised by her decisiveness. Linda smiled gently. Then, I wish you courage. Seward is a place that keeps its secrets, but it also keeps its promises. Emily didn't know what that meant, but she felt a shift inside her, a quiet, trembling change. They signed the papers. And with each stroke of the pen, Emily felt herself step onto a path she didn't yet understand. But it was theirs. And in a world that had given her so little that meant everything. The wind cut sideways through the trees as the old pickup groaned up the final stretch of snow-packed road, the forest pressing close on both sides like a dark corridor carved through ice. Emily Carter tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her breath fogging the glass despite the weak heater rattling beneath the dashboard. The children sat bundled in layers, Noah alert and watchful, Grace humming nervously into her scarf, and Eli leaning against her shoulder with wide, uncertain eyes. Anchorage felt a lifetime away, though it had only been a few hours since they pulled out of the city. The deeper they drove into Seward's outskirts, the more the world seemed to fold in on itself. Fewer signs of life, more shadows pooling at the feet of ancient trees, branches bowing under the weight of winter. When the GPS finally sputtered out and the map marker hovered uselessly on the screen, Emily swallowed hard and followed Linda's printed directions instead, every mile adding to the knot of apprehension twisting beneath her ribs. At last the road narrowed into a clearing where snow lay untouched. No tracks, no recent visitors, nothing but silence as dense as wool. There, half buried in frost, stood the cabin. It was smaller than she imagined. Weathered logs stacked into crooked walls, the wood faded to a pale gray with streaks of moss near the foundation. The roof sagged at the corners but held steady beneath a thin crust of ice. Smoke hadn't risen from its rusted chimney in years. It looked both abandoned and strangely stubborn, like something that had resisted collapse with a quiet, almost human will. Emily stepped out of the truck, her breath catching in the frigid air as she took in the sight. "This is it," she murmured. Noah hopped out, boots crunching in the snow. The boy's sandy blonde hair caught tiny flakes that melted on contact with his skin. He studied the cabin with narrowed, analytical eyes, an instinct inherited from a childhood spent navigating unstable places. "Looks old," he said, brushing snow off the porch rail. "Like, really old. But kind of beautiful," Grace whispered as she slid out behind him. Her red curls stuck out from under her hat, her freckles glowing pink from the cold. She stepped carefully toward the cabin as if afraid to disturb the silence around it. "It feels like a storybook house." Emily forced a smile, though her stomach twisted. "Let's hope it has a happy ending." Eli, waddling through the snow in his oversized coat, tugged her hand. "Mommy, is it safe?" She knelt to meet his eyes. Soft hazel wells of worry. "It's ours," she said, brushing a curl from his forehead. "And we'll make it safe." Noah pushed open the door. It groaned low like something exhaling after years of holding its breath. Dust spiraled into the air as a dim wash of winter light slipped inside. Emily entered her boots, pressing into the creaking wooden floorboards. The interior smelled of pine sap, cold iron, and thyme. The single-room layout held a small kitchen area to the left, an old potbelly stove centered near the back, and Samuel's former living space arranged around a rocking chair whose runners were cracked but still upright. "It's like he left in a hurry," Grace murmured, touching an abandoned mug on the counter. "Or like he never really left," Noah added. Emily shivered slightly. She wasn't sure which thought unsettled her more. On a shelf near the stove, a stack of leather-bound journals sat reculed, crookedly. On the small table beneath the window were photographs, dozens of them. Noah picked one up, squinting. "Mom, look. These are weird." Emily walked over. Notched into black and white prints were images of dense forests, rocky coasts, and snowy ridges. Nothing unusual at first glance until she noticed small pinpoints of light in several of them. Pale glimmers suspended in the air like drifting stars fallen too close to Earth. In the corner of each photograph, Samuel had written notes in tight script movement at 3:12 a.m. Unnatural glow. Reappeared after 6 days. Not the aurora. Emily frowned. Samuel was a photographer. Maybe he'd been capturing long exposures anomalies in the light. Or maybe he'd been chasing something more. Grace found a crate beside the rocking chair. Inside were small steel traps, animal traps folded neatly, though a few were rusting. Next to them lay maps of the forest corridors of Samuel's movements marked with red ink, and on the margins, tracks vanish here. Something watching. Emily's skin prickled. "Let's leave those alone," she said quietly. But Noah had already opened one of the journals. His brow furrowed deeply. "Mom, listen to this," he read aloud. "Night expedition, 3rd week. Light appeared in the ravine, flickered like it wanted me to follow. I'll go again tomorrow. No one believes me, but I know what I saw. The mountain keeps its secrets unless you chase them." Emily took the journal from him gently. Samuel's handwriting was uneven, almost frantic in certain passages. The more she read, the more the unease beneath her ribs grew. "Maybe he was alone too long," she murmured. "Sometimes that makes people see things." Or, maybe he saw something real, Noah said. He didn't sound crazy. Just, sure. Grace pressed her nose to the frost-covered window. "Mom," she pointed. "There's something outside." Emily joined her. For a moment she saw only trees' dark silhouettes reaching into the sky. Then, something flickered a faint blue shimmer deep in the line of pines. It pulsed once, twice, then vanished. Her breath caught. Samuel had written of a blue light. She hadn't believed it until now. "Probably the moon," she whispered, though she didn't believe it. The children slept uneasily that night on the cabin floor, wrapped in blankets Emily found stored in a wooden chest. The old stove crackled, projecting a wan glow across the room. Emily lay awake long after their breathing steadied. Every sound outside, the groan of frozen branches, the whistle of wind between the logs, felt amplified. The journal lay beside her. She opened it again. "If someone finds this," Samuel had written, "then you are meant to know. The light isn't danger, it's a path. Follow it when the forest breathes." What did that even mean? Emily closed the book and rubbed her temples. She wanted to believe Samuel was simply eccentric, but something about the cabin, the photographs, the flicker of blue, it all felt interconnected, like an invisible thread tugging at her attention. Hours passed. The fire sank to embers. Then she saw it again. Through the gap in the curtains, a blue glow drifting between the trees, soft and deliberate, like something calling. She sat upright, heart-hammering, breath uneven. Cold air seeped through the walls, brushing her skin with a strange electric chill. "Samuel," she whispered into the darkness, "what did you want us to find?" The light pulsed once more, and Emily began to realize the cabin wasn't just a shelter. It was the beginning of something deeper, something Samuel had meant her to uncover. The storm arrived before dawn, sweeping across the forest like a white curtain dropped from the sky, smothering every tree, stone, and path into a featureless world. Wind howled through the branches with a restless anger, rattling the cabin's loose shutters and forcing cold air through the seams between the logs. Inside, Emily huddled closer to the stove, feeding it pieces of firewood Samuel had stored in the shed outside. The fire crackled unevenly, fighting the intrusion of winter, but even its glow felt fragile, as though the storm might snuff it out with a single breath. Noah was the first to rise. He had a habit of waking early, a side effect of years sleeping lightly in unsafe places. He was tall for 10, his blonde hair falling across sharp, thoughtful eyes that always seemed to be scanning for danger. This morning he stood in front of the frosted window, his breath forming small circles on the glass as he wiped it away to see outside. "Mom," he whispered. Emily turned her hands, still hovering near the stove. "What is it? Someone's been here." His voice carried a solemn certainty that sent a chill up Emily's spine. She moved to the window. The snow was thick, but not untouched. Clear footprints curved around the cabin in a half circle, disappearing behind a line of trees. They were fresh, unmarred by falling snow, which meant whoever had left them had done so very recently. Her heartbeat tightened. "Get back," she murmured. Noah stepped aside. Grace, rubbing sleep from her freckled face, looked worried. Eli clung to Emily's leg, burying his nose in her coat. Emily forced herself to breathe, forced her mind not to leap to every terrifying conclusion at once. "No one is coming inside," she said softly. We're going to be okay." But the lie trembled even as she spoke it. Hours passed before the storm allowed any visibility. When it softened to a steady snowfall, Emily bundled up and stepped outside, leaving Noah sick in charge. The cold slapped her instantly. The footprints were deep, made by someone wearing heavy boots, someone tall, someone confident enough to approach a cabin that looked inhabited. She followed the prints a few steps until they disappeared into the woods. That was where she stopped. Something about the forest felt wrong. Too still. Too expectant. She turned back toward the cabin only to see a figure emerging through the snowfall walking directly toward her. Her breath froze. The man wore a thick olive jacket lined with fur at the collar patches of frost clinging to the shoulders. He was in his 40s, tall, with a broad-shouldered build that suggested years of outdoor labor. His face was lined, marked by a worn heaviness like someone who had spent a lifetime in bitter weather and harsher company. A short, dark beard covered a strong jaw. His eyes, gray and steady, held something unreadable halfway between regret and caution. He lifted his gloved hands slowly, palms open. "Emily Carter," he called over the wind, his voice deep and gravelly, shaped by years of disuse or quiet living. Emily stepped backward instinctively. "Who are you? Name's Derek Miles," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "I worked with Samuel, your relative." His breath steamed in the cold. Up close, she saw he carried a small leather satchel cracked at the edges and a limp in his left leg, subtle but noticeable. An old injury, perhaps, from a fall or accident. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Not with your kids. Not with what Samuel found." Emily held her coat tighter around herself. "What did he find?" Derek hesitated, gaze flicking toward the woods. "A natural phenomenon. Something rare. Something powerful. I don't know exactly what it is. Samuel kept most of it secret, but others know about it, and they want it." The wind rattled the trees behind them. Emily felt the weight of his words settle sharp and unsettling. What kind of others? Derek's jaw tightened. People who don't care who gets hurt along the way? He looked at her with an expression that was deeply serious, almost haunted. "Samuel trusted you for a reason. But trust doesn't mean safety. You need to get your kids out of here. Tonight." Emily shook her head, fear and stubbornness warring inside her. She had nowhere else to go. "I can't just leave." "Then at least be careful," Derek said, reaching into his satchel. He pulled out a folded map, its edges frayed. Samuel marked the places he visited most. "Use this. And if you see the blue light—" His voice faltered. He glanced back toward the forest. "Don't follow it alone." Emily frowned. "Wait, how did you even know we were here?" Derek exhaled sharply, white breath rising in the cold. "Samuel told me. In case something ever happened to him. I didn't expect his letter to go to someone with children." His eyes softened briefly. "You seem like a good mother. That makes this harder." He turned as if to leave, then paused. "Lock your doors. Don't go out at night. And if you see anyone else around here, run." With that, he walked into the storm, the wind swallowing him whole until he vanished like a shadow dissolving into white. Emily stayed frozen for several seconds before hurrying back inside, her hands trembling violently. Noah immediately noticed. Who was he? She told them only part of the truth. A warning. A man who knew Samuel. Someone who said they needed to be careful. Eli climbed into her lap, scared. Grace sat close beside her. Noah watched her with the seriousness of an adult weighing every word. When the children finally settled, Emily checked the journals again. They were exactly where she left them. But when she opened the one she had read the night before, her breath caught. Several pages, dozens, were missing. Torn. Jagged edges protruding like ripped wings. Someone had been inside the cabin. Someone had looked for something. Her pulse thundered as she searched the room, noticing things she hadn't before. The window latch slightly bent, the map on the table shifted, the drawer under the bed left open. Derek had warned her. But he wasn't the only one watching. That night, the blue light returned brighter than before, pulsing like a slow heartbeat beyond the trees. Emily stood by the window, the stolen pages pressing against her thoughts. Samuel's secret was not just real, someone else wanted it. And they were closer than she ever imagined. Morning came slowly, as though the sun hesitated to rise over the frost-covered forest. A pale ribbon of light filtered through the cabin's window, illuminating the journals Emily had left open across the table. The torn pages, the strange symbols Samuel had drawn, and the final scribbled line, "Follow the light when the forest breathes," echoed through her mind. The blue glow from the night before still haunted her, pulsing in her memory like a restless whisper. She had barely slept. Noah was the first to notice. "Mom," he said, sitting beside her, his face serious beneath his tousled blonde hair. "We have to see where it goes." He wasn't wrong. The cabin no longer felt safe, not with missing journal pages, strange footprints, and a warning from a man who seemed both honest and afraid. Grace approached quietly, her red curls tangled, her freckles pale from worry. "The light didn't feel scary," she whispered. "It felt sad." Emily cupped the little girl's cheek gently. Grace always sensed emotion like a tuning fork vibrating with what others missed. And Eli, sweet timid Eli, climbed into Emily's lap, burying his face in her sweater as if sensing the entire mountain was holding its breath. Emily took a deep breath. Samuel had left her something. Not just a cabin, not just journals. Something he wanted her to see. Something he had died protecting. By the time snow softened into a thin veil and daylight held steady, Emily had made up her mind. "Bundle up," she told the children. "We're going into the woods." The forest felt different that morning, quieter, as though listening. Trees towered overhead like dark cathedral columns, their branches heavy with ice, their trunks groaning softly under the shifting weight of winter. The air had a metallic coldness, each exhale turning to crystal fog. Emily kept the journals tucked in her coat, flipping them open when the path became unclear. Samuel's notes were cryptic, but she found enough rough sketches of tree clusters, a curved ridge, and a mark shaped like an eye. Noah walked ahead, scanning the snow for tracks or danger, his natural vigilance sharper than ever. Grace stayed close behind, her mittened hands brushing tree bark as if greeting every trunk they passed. Eli held Emily's hand tightly, occasionally pointing with small gloves at places where frost glistened in unusual colors. They had walked nearly an hour when the familiar blue glow shimmered faintly between a dense line of pines. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Once, twice, then drifted deeper. Emily swallowed and, "Stay close." They followed. The light moved slowly, almost patiently, weaving around fallen logs and frozen brush. It wasn't a beam or a flame. It was something softer, like trapped moonlight slipping through the air. They reached a narrow ravine, the ground dipping into a bowl of snow. The glow lingered at the base of a boulder coated in frost. And then Emily saw it, a gap just wide enough for a person to slip through, half hidden behind ice and stone. A cave. Samuel had written of a breathing place beneath the mountain. Noah brushed snow away from the cave mouth. "It's warm," he murmured, astonished. Emily felt it too faint, heat rising from within like the earth exhaled gently into winter's cold. "Let's go," she whispered. Slowly, they ducked into the cave. Light reflected instantly across the walls. They weren't just ice, they were crystals. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Sharp, elongated pillars of clear and cobalt blue ice rising from the floor and hanging from the ceiling like frozen chandeliers. And they glowed. Not brightly, not artificially. They caught ambient light from outside and refracted it in dazzling streaks that danced across the walls like living auroras. Grace's eyes widened in wonder. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's magic." Eli squeezed Emily's hand. "It looks like the sky came inside." Emily felt tears prick her throat. She had never seen anything so breathtaking, so impossibly fragile. And suddenly she understood Samuel understood why he had written with such obsession, why he had guarded this place with his life. Samuel hadn't just found a cave. He had found a phenomenon: ice crystals shaped by geothermal warmth and ancient pressure, touched by the reflection of auroras overhead. "The light that tells stories," Emily whispered, remembering the journal. Noah pointed toward deeper shadows. "There's something else." At the far end of the cave lay a small wooden box, weathered and cracked, but intact. Emily knelt, brushing ice from its surface. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Samuel's handwriting filled each envelope. The top one was addressed to her mother. Her breath caught. The next was addressed to Emily Carter. Noah crouched beside her. "Mom, he knew you." Emily opened the letter with trembling hands. Samuel's words spilled out that he had known her mother when they were young, that circumstances had separated them, that he had spent years trying to find their family again after learning Emily's mother had died, that the cabin and land were meant for Emily and her children to protect them and to protect the cave. "The mountain holds beauty worth saving," Samuel wrote, "and you, Emily, are the one I trust to guard it when I no longer can." Emily pressed the letter to her chest, heart quivering. "Why didn't he come find me?" she whispered to the cave, to the ice, to the memory of a man she would never meet. But she knew the answer. She saw it in every line of cramped ink. He had tried, and life had swallowed the chance. A sound echoed from the cave mouth, a crunch of snow. Emily turned sharply, ready to grab the children, only to see a figure approaching. Derek Miles. He ducked inside frost, clinging to his beard and coat, his gray eyes scanning the cave with heavy emotion. "You found it," he murmured. Up close, his features looked even more worn, deep lines around the eyes, the limp in his left leg more pronounced from the cold. But there was something gentler now in his expression. Samuel would be relieved. "You knew about this place?" Emily asked. Derek nodded. "Only pieces. He kept the details secret to protect it, and to protect you if the truth ever became yours." He knelt, inspecting the ice crystals with reverence. "There are groups who would exploit something like this. Mining companies, researchers without ethics, people who see beauty as profit." His jaw tightened. "But it won't be them who claims it." Emily frowned. "Then who?" Derek reached into his coat and produced a handful of official papers: government forms, environmental certifications, legal petitions. "Samuel told me if anything happened to him to make sure the land stayed protected. I've already begun the process with the Department of Natural Resources. We can register this area as a conservation site." Emily asked quietly. Derek gave a small, tired smile. "I'm on your side. Always was." The children crowded around as he explained what it meant: legal protection, annual stipends for land guardianship, state assistance for housing and employment. Samuel's land would remain untouched, and the cave, this miracle of light, would be safe. When they returned to the cabin, Emily felt something she had not felt in years: warmth. Not from the stove, but from hope. Weeks passed. The legal protections were approved. Emily was granted guardianship of the land as Samuel wished. The town helped her secure a modest home in Seward. Derek helped her settle in his quiet loyalty firm beside her. Noah's eyes brightened with safety. Grace's laughter returned. Eli slept through the night without fear. And Emily, after years of surviving storms, finally stepped into a sunrise that felt like it was hers. The mountain no longer felt haunted. It felt alive, protected. and grateful. In the end, Emily discovered that the greatest miracles are often hidden in the coldest seasons of our lives. What Samuel left behind wasn't just a secret or a cave filled with shimmering light. It was a reminder that God places guideposts in our path long before we know we'll need them. Sometimes He sends them as people, sometimes as opportunities, and sometimes as a quiet glow in the darkness, showing us that we are never as lost as we feel. Just like Emily, many of us walk through storms believing we're alone, believing the world has forgotten our name. But God sees every step. He knows every burden we carry. And in His own time, often in the most unexpected ways, He turns broken roads into new beginnings. The cave's mysterious light became a symbol of hope, a gentle whisper that even when life feels frozen, God is still working beneath the surface, shaping blessings we have yet to see. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who might need a reminder that miracles still happen. Leave a comment and tell us what part spoke to you the most. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of faith resilience and the quiet ways God moves in our everyday lives. May the Lord bless you, guide you, and protect your home and your family today and always.